I can, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first YOLO Live session. I am Devon Carew.
I'm Nikhil Sharma.
That's Dr. Nikhil Sharma, and us along with Neil Gulhar, we are the founders of YOLO, right? What is YOLO? This is something that we've been working on for the last couple of months now, and we've been getting all these questions. I think just to keep things really simple, we are on a mission to build a platform that makes the experience of charitable giving fun, social, and transparent.
And we want to rebrand YOLO to mean make it count.
Right. So today, we are super grateful to have our launch partner with us here today, and it's Revolution Foods. And we are also extremely honored to have Kirsten Tobey here with us today. She's the co-founder of Revolution Foods and the Chief Impact Officer. So Kirsten, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. So happy to have you here. So a little bit on Revolution Foods. Hopefully I do this justice, Kirsten. If I do not, let me know. So founded in 2006, Revolution Foods is committed to social justice by transforming citywide wellness and making healthy, chef-crafted, culturally relevant, and dignified food accessible to all. The company's innovative approach began with serving student-inspired and freshly prepared healthy meals in the San Francisco Bay Area. Today, the company employs over 1,500 people who design, produce, and deliver 2 million meals per week. And actually, Kirsten, I think it was actually 3 million at some point, and I know we went through the pandemic, so I mean, that alone is amazing, astonishing. Right, so these 2 million meals per week go across various sites, 18 states, right? Including community feeding programs, childhood education centers, districts, charter schools, and after-school youth programs. Revolution Food is committed to combating food insecurity. They are a certified B Corporation. They are the recipient of the B Lab COVID-19 Impact Award. And then I think overall, they aim to drive system change and for a brighter future. Is that okay? Did I miss anything?
You got it just right.
Thank you for that. So again, truly honored, Kirsten, to have you here with us today. We were listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago, and it was a World Changing Woman, right? And I think it was about a year ago, to be honest, right around this time, I think, right? It seems like so long ago. But they dubbed you, and again, these are their words, not mine. They dubbed you as one of the badass founders changing the world,
Wow.
right?
Badass.
So not only Chief Impact Officer, but also a badass, right? So I mean, that's pretty incredible. I like that. So what I want to get into, Kirsten, is how did you get to being a badass, right? So you're starting off your journey from, leading educational programs in Ecuador, right? You're evaluating nutritional programs in Ghana to legitimately starting a revolution to combat childhood obesity, right? So tell us, how did you get here? What was your journey like?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing I'll say is that it's taken a huge team of people to get to where we are today. So I want to, make sure to recognize and shout out to everybody who's been a part of this journey. It's been 15 years in the making. So, it's been quite a time. And, we have now over 1,500 teammates who are with us now, and many others who've been with us along the way. So, although I may be, and Kristen and I might be the ones that are called the badasses, it's taken a village of badasses. But my personal journey kind of started as I was a teacher and, worked both inside the classroom and outside the classroom, working with kids. And I think one of the things that I noticed really early on was that kids were, you could just tell the difference between kids who were well nourished and their ability to focus in school, and kids who were not eating well. And in the early days of when Kristen and I were going out and talking to teachers and students and principals, we would hear teachers all the time tell us stories of, the kids who were coming into the classroom with, their fingers bright red from eating hot Cheetos for breakfast and their tongues bright blue from drinking some kind of blue drink on their way to school. Those kids were the ones that were falling asleep before lunchtime because they were, just not able to focus. And so that's, a part of what spurred me to really look at the idea of how do we change the way that Americans eat. And I say Americans because one of the things you mentioned, I was in Ghana. I spent some time in West Africa looking at school feeding programs in West Africa, and was really, interested, and was working with some really amazing leaders on the ground there who were working to make locally sourced food available in schools. In that situation, it was to get, mostly girls to show up at school because they would get a free meal at school. But it was being there that made me, really kind of double down and say, you know what, right in our backyard here in Oakland, there are kids that are, undernourished in very different ways. And so that was, what led, me to partner up with Kirsten, and we had this idea of transforming the way that, that kids eat first. And, over the years, we've expanded into, adult meals as well. So it's not just about kids, but it's about eating well kind of throughout life.
Right. And from obviously before this, there's just tons of research to do just about you and about Kirsten, about Revolution Food. So, one of the cool things we found out is, you were essentially at Berkeley, in a class, and this is essentially where this kind of just developed, right?
Yeah, we were classmates in business school at Cal, and Go Bears, if there's any,
Go Bears.
Any Bears out there. We were in business school, and we were, we were in a product development class. We took a few classes together, but in this product development class, the assignment one night was, go home and think about a problem that you think needs to be solved in a new way. And, it could be anything in the world. It could be, the washing machine. It could be, the calculator, anything. And so in this class of 60 people, 2 of us came in the next day, basically with variations on the same idea, which was that we each came in saying school lunch needs to be changed.
Wow.
And the way that we,
and you two didn't know each other prior to this.
We had been sort of introduced by friends, but we had never, worked together. We weren't friends yet. And so we sort of looked at each other across the room and said, "Can we work together on this?" And that class was a really cool, a very cool introduction to product design, because it was not about, how do you make the current product better, but it was how do you take a problem in society and figure out the solution to it. So not assuming that the answer to the problem. So it was through that class and several other classes that we actually started going out into the real world, not just kind of sitting in our in our office and thinking of ideas. It was, going out and talking to principals and teachers and students and parents to learn more about, what are the challenges in the world of school meals and what needs were not currently being met.
Right. So, and I'm glad you mentioned going out and speaking with the students and with the kids. So, what are the things that we love just about, the inception of Revolution Foods and how you two got started was you actually went out there and you spoke to the children, right? The children were the consumers. So you actually went out there and talked to them. So tell us a little bit about that. What sort of feedback were they giving to you about school lunches and about, what was going on in their school programs?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. A few different things. One, we went out and talked to students, and students have always been, especially in our schools efforts, they've always been our number one, focus, because if kids don't like the food that you're putting in front of them, they're not going to eat it. And, you can convince an adult to eat something that they don't like, but it's really hard to convince a kid to eat something that they don't like because it's good for them. Right. And so, we sat down and talked with kids, and people have all different perceptions about kids. That we had people who were telling us, like, oh, kids don't like healthy food. They're never going to like, food that's been made to be, nutritious. And, and we went out and talked to kids, and we said, what are your favorite things to eat? We just kind of started with that. And across the board, every kid told us they loved fresh fruit. And we were like, that's a great starting point. And fresh fruit that's good, right? Not like the stuff that's like the oranges that are still green, or the bananas that are still green, or the,
Fruit, right.
But so we were like, well, there's a really good starting point where we can, as we will make sure that we serve really good quality fresh fruit with every meal that we deliver. And kids eat it up. It's, so when you sort of give kids a chance, they actually,
Yeah.
you know, like a lot of school leaders we talked to were like, you have to have high expectations for kids because kids will meet the expectations that you have for them. And that's so true with food too. And kids had all kinds of ideas about, you know, well, here are recipes that my grandma makes that I want to see on the school lunch menu. And here are things that I like to eat. And it wasn't all, you know, potato chips and French fries. It was
Right.
like they had really, really good ideas. And so that sort of put us on the, on, you know, this mission of being really kid inspired and chef crafted. So,
Yeah.
you know, kids aren't always going to be the best chefs, but they will have we figured they will have great ideas. And so, you know, from that day on, the chefs on our team have always spent a lot of time sitting down with the consumers that they're designing for. So in many cases that's kids, in other cases that's, you know, now senior citizens and
Right.
others. But and that also translates into the importance of making sure that the food that we're making is culturally relevant.
Right.
Because what kids are eating in, you know, San Francisco and what they want to eat in San Francisco might be super different from what kids want to eat in Houston or New Orleans or Boston or, you know, Denver. So we made sure that in our food design that we're always focused on, you know, what's the, you know, there's a number of things that kids across the country like. Spaghetti and meatballs, you know, we can keep basically the same recipe in most places. But, you know, there are things in LA that kids want to eat, and kids in, you know, San Francisco have never heard of a pupusa, but in DC kids want pupusas. So it's so making sure that we are culturally relevant and responding to that our chefs are like really tuned in to what the local both cultural and culinary traditions are has been a really big driving force of our food design.
Right. Yeah. Because I know here in New Orleans, I think, you know, one of the meals you folks put out is when you have jambalaya in it, right? Which, you know, by the way, that's legitimately when I touched down here, that's one of the first things I did is I had to get some jambalaya. So, you know, you mentioned a couple of things, and, you know, one of the things that you said that keyed in for me right now is, you know, you mentioned just the ability just to go out and get fresh fruit, right? So, you know, and I think when we discuss this a little bit further, you know, a lot of what we're finding here is that they're just food deserts, right? So, in a lot of these, you know, underserved and impoverished areas, there's just not many places where, you know, kids, parents, families, what have you, can actually go out and just get fresh produce anywhere, right? Is that some of the issues that you're seeing in some of the cities that you're in?
Yeah, for sure. And that's been, you know, one of what we've seen through COVID especially has been that there's a real potential. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be changed about the food ecosystem kind of citywide, but there's a really important role that schools can play in schools, and I would say other community programs, but that schools and community programs can play in actually being a place where high quality food is distributed. So if a school is in the middle of a food desert, you know, why not make that school be a place where, you know, food banks and other programs are also, you know, distributing good quality fresh produce in addition to what the school lunch program might be providing for the kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you grew up in Palo Alto, right? So it's golden sunshine. I was there a couple of years ago, and there's nothing like the sun out there. It's incredible, right? So growing up in Palo Alto, can you remember your school lunches, and what was your favorite?
Well, so my school lunches, one of the things that I remember, it's funny, I don't have like a lot of memories of my school lunches, but because I think I mostly brought my lunch from home, and I think at some point my parents made me start packing my own lunch, so it was probably like peanut butter and jelly and an apple every day because I didn't really know what I was doing. But I do remember that that the school brought in like McDonald's and Burger King every Wednesday, and that was our special lunch, was, you know, being able to get fast food as our special lunch with like a little soda and, you know, chicken nuggets and the dipping sauce and French fries. And we were all so excited about it because that was like, that was a special meal for us.
Like, who doesn't want a McDonald's Happy Meal, right? That's I feel like that's something else we can unpack entirely too as well. I mean, that's wild. But so, you know, I've known Nikhil now for like 25 years, right? So I distinctly remember, you know, 5th grade Miss Fotai's class, and I remember every Friday it was like Sloppy Joe Fridays. couldn't, that's all I ever wanted, right? That was it.
Do you know what was inside that sloppy Joe?
God, no. I have no idea
what is inside a sloppy Joe. I never figured that out.
Back then, I have no idea what was in it.
I mean, I remember the tater tots, the
always
chocolate
good.
milk,
Always
those were like
good.
the
Always
go-to,
good.
things during the lunchtime. But yeah,
always good. But so, I mean, I even think, back then, we just really didn't know, what was really, what we were ingesting, right? We really didn't know what food that we were taking in, right?
Right. So,
and then also after taking that in, what that essentially leads to, right?
The effects of having poor nutrition. So recently we put out a video for our users, like a medical video. We were discussing diabetes mellitus type 2, which actually affects 34 million citizens across the U.S. And we all know that diabetes stems from poor nutrition and obesity, which actually stems from childhood. I don't know if many people know, but 25% of teens actually have pre-diabetes or diabetes. So how big of a problem is nutrition for children today? And what effect do you think that has to do with children during lunch meals?
Yeah, I mean, from what we have seen with all of the stats, 1 in 3 kids are either obese or at risk of obesity and overweight at such an early age. And there's, sort of the nutrition problems. And then there's also the food security problems. And often you actually see, obesity and diabetes risk and heart disease going hand in hand with food insecurity. And so I think it's the sort of combination of those two things where, when families don't have enough, to be able to put food on the table at all, the easy thing to do is often to go, in a direction that's going for less healthy food. And it's, it can be really challenging, and it's not, I think it's, people often say, well, if people just knew more about healthy eating, but I think it really is our society needs to set up our families for success in a different way. And, there are conversations going on about how do you incentivize families through, to spend SNAP dollars on higher quality foods and those sorts of things. So, we've been really focused on sort of that combination of, many of the kids that we serve in our programs are coming from food insecure households and are also struggling with some of the nutrition related risks and diseases that we see across the country. And so, making sure that when they're at school that they are getting a high quality breakfast, a high quality lunch, a high quality supper. And now, for the last year when school hasn't been in session, that, many families were able to drive to school and pick those meals up in a multi-day box and take them home. And we're actually seeing families kind of share those meals across the family. So it's not just the kid in school that's eating them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I read a fact that showed that every 0.5 miles, there's a fast food restaurant, so just around almost every other block, there's accessibility to these really unhealthy food items. It just makes it more challenging for us to be able to digest, or take in healthy meals.
Right.
I think there was another great, a couple of great facts that you mentioned in your talk at Berkeley that really stuck out to me. One was for children who were born in the year 2000, 1/3 of those kids will actually end up developing diabetes, and then half of those kids, if you're a minority, half of those kids will end up developing diabetes. And the most staggering fact I thought was, kids that are born from the year 2000, the parents of those kids will actually outlive their children. I mean, that's scary.
I think when even hearing you say this, Nick, it's one of those things you think of. And I think, when you started talking about this, Kirsten, one of the things that you said is, these issues that you're seeing in some of the other countries, right? But, these are issues that are dominantly here in the United States, right? So these are happening, this is happening in our own backyard, right?
Yeah.
One of the terms that we've floated around a lot is food insecurity. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is, what that means, and what that actually essentially leads to, right?
Yeah. Well, so food insecurity is like there are some very technical definitions of it, but generally it's, if a family will answer or a person will answer the question, have you had trouble, making a decision about whether you should spend your money on food or other things in the past, sometimes it's the past week, sometimes it's in the past, 3 weeks, depending on the way the questions are asked. But it basically is, that there are many people, and it's in the pandemic, it's increased even more. And it's I think I've seen statistics that it's 2 in 5 Black and Hispanic families are struggling with food insecurity, particularly families with kids under 12, because they're trying to feed many mouths in the household, and so food insecurity is just people having to make choices about whether to spend money on food or other things like rent and um, you know other expenses that they might have in their daily life. And so it's a as unemployment grows, it becomes more of a problem, and it's addressed through some federal programs, and federal subsidies, and then there's a lot of work that food banks and philanthropists do to also help to alleviate food insecurity when it's especially at times like this.
Right. One of the things that I actually found like very fascinating is the correlation between good nutrition and academic achievement, as well as improvement in cognitive function. Are you seeing any trends out there showing this?
I mean, we have always heard, from the early days of when we were starting Revolution Foods, we heard principals and teachers telling us that they saw the link between how well kids were eating, and how well they were able to focus and do in school. There was a lot of research on the correlation between kids eating breakfast, and especially a healthy breakfast, and being able to focus and learn in school. And then in the last few years, we've seen a couple of other studies come out that have looked specifically at our programs. One looking in California, one looking in other states like New York and Louisiana. But both of those studies tied our meal program and our menu to directly to academic improvements over time. And so, there's probably a number of factors at play there, and it's hard to say that one thing is directly leading to the other, but I think it's probably a couple of factors. One is, the having a healthy food menu that's kind of the only thing that's being served in school, so that kids are being exposed to it, 2 and sometimes 3 meals a day, ensures that kids are getting, like we talked about earlier, like the fresh fruit, that there's, plenty of fresh fruit available for them to eat on a daily basis. And that's, helping with sustained energy levels, rather than the, kind of the junk food, energy boost and then crash that we all are familiar with.
Right. I even think as adults, I'm definitely familiar with it, right? Because you work so hard throughout the day, and then lunchtime comes, and really you just want this big bowl of pasta that you just want to devour and get into, but that's not necessarily the best idea, right? An hour later, you would definitely be passed out, right?
So
Yeah,
better foods equals better bodies and better brains, right?
exactly.
Yeah, no, well said, well said. One of the things that we really like about what you folks are doing at Revolution Food is this habit that I feel that you're starting at a very young age, right? And I think essentially what will hopefully what ends up happening is these kids are building these healthy habits at a very young age that they're going to take on and progress through their lives, right? And so very early on, you're teaching them that instead of having the Cheetos, having an apple might be better, right? And what essentially what they're ingesting, what they're putting in their body. So I think I think ultimately the more, and we can talk about this more too, the more when we looked into who we want to partner with, right? And looking at what your folks' mission was, that's one of the things that I keyed in on, is that just habit forming that you folks started.
Yeah. And I have to give credit to the school leaders and the teachers, and the other people kind of in the environment, and parents, in the environment that kids are growing up in. And there's such a growing awareness, I would say, among school leaders, among families, that we hear so many families saying, we want our kids to eat the best food that they can, and families of every different walk of life and all across the income spectrum. Um, and the fact that they may not have access to high quality food in their in their corner store or wherever it might be, but they appreciate the food that's being served at school and through other programs is something that we hear all the time. And I think it's not just about the food, but it's about the food environment that kids are growing up in, and having a principal and a teacher and all the other teacher, the PE teacher and the classroom teacher, and everybody saying like, hey, what are you eating today and how's it making you feel? And like that environment is such an important part of this, developing those habits for kids too.
I agree. Like there has to be some initiative like that's taken upon like some of the leaders, to be able to bring that up and really educate, their fellow classmates or their fellow teachers and colleagues to be able to, make sure that that's being passed on to the children in the class. So
Absolutely,
it's really a big deal.
So we also looked at I think it's a qualitative survey data that you possibly have. I think it was something that we were either reading or something that you said in one of your talks, and I guess you went out and you surveyed teachers. I know we were just talking about teachers and school leaders. So what did you uncover from that?
I mean, we have heard a lot of things from teachers, everything from, and actually from the teachers who, like we were talking about earlier, like that, the food environment that they are helping to create is so important. So when we see teachers who are, either in, and this is all, I have to couch this all like pre-pandemic when kids were eating in lunchrooms, teachers that would go and sit down in the lunchroom with kids and talk to them about what they were eating, setting the example themselves for, how to think about balancing your meal and making sure you're eating your whole piece of fruit and, not just starting in on the, on the entree. But we've heard a ton of feedback from teachers just talking about the level of focus that they see in their kids, the fact that they're seeing fewer behavioral problems in kids that are eating better and sort of eating more on a healthy food on a more sustained basis, and like I said earlier, like the consumption of breakfast, you just can't underestimate how important it is that kids are eating breakfast before they start their school day. And in some places we've worked really hard with schools to get breakfast, after, they call it breakfast after the bell or breakfast in the classroom in place. And now, during the pandemic, we actually have families that come and they pick up, 5 days worth of food at a time at a school site. And so, they're able to have their breakfast at home before they start their Zoom classes and get through the day. So, all of those are.
That's incredible, Kirsten. So we have a lot of people who, I think as I told you, Kirsten, there's a lot of people out here who wanted to ask a lot of different questions, right? Everybody was really excited to have you on. So I'm going to give some time to get a couple questions in. What do we have, Brittany?
It's a question from Tanisha. You are a mom and co-founder of such a large organization. As a fellow mom, I'm interested in how you talk to your kids about nutrition and convince them to eat healthy.
It's a great question. Yeah. So I am a mom. I have 3 kids that are 3 girls who are 6.5, 11, and 13.5.
Awesome.
So we've got a, nice range in the household. And, I really empathize with parents who are struggling with kids, and trying to get them to eat the right things. I think, in our house, it's all about balance. And it is about like making sure that each of the kids has healthy things that they really like and that we're preparing those on a regular basis. Of course, with 3 kids, their favorite foods are 3 totally different things. And so, we have to, I wish they would all like the same things. One of them loves kale salad. One of them loves Caesar salad. And one of them would much prefer her vegetables cooked, so it's you have to sort of, both. I think the combination of listening to what they like and making sure that you're offering things that they like on a regular basis, but also saying, you know what, we're trying something new tonight and everybody's going to taste it. You don't have to eat all of it, but there's a lot of research showing that, that to develop a new habit in terms of like eating something new and really liking it, it can take up to, 20 to 25 times of trying it before you learn a taste for it. Like if you think about, probably a bad example, but the first time you tasted coffee, you probably thought it tasted horrible, right? And now it's like a part of my daily routine and I love it. But things like I remember hating tomatoes when I was a kid, and 2 of my kids hate tomatoes. One of them loves them. And I'm like, keep trying them, because, you know, by the time you're, you know, you might be 19, you might be 24, eventually you're going to like them.
I mean, I remember hating Brussels sprouts, hated them, right?
Yeah.
Definitely remember hating Brussels sprouts, and then now everywhere we go, I'm like, oh, where's the Brussels sprouts? Are there Brussels sprouts on the menu? Right?
Yeah.
Everywhere I go at this point.
Are you saying that you're not serving any sloppy joes at your house?
We've never served sloppy joes at my house, but if we did, I mean, you probably could make a good, high quality, healthy sloppy joe. You know, like I think
there it is. Yeah.
To be
one
honest,
of the things that we've been focused on is like high quality ingredients. You know, even if you're making you know, something that's more of a kid favorite, like a hamburger, you can make a hamburger that's with a whole wheat bun and, you know, fresh lettuce and tomato and high quality beef. And
right. I think I do, and I'm just going to put this out there. Who knows what's going to come from it? But, you know, if you're out there and you're watching this and you have a recipe for, you know, a good, healthy sloppy joe meal, please send it our way. Let us know. We'll have to try it and cook that up. Do we have time for another one, or we got to keep going? Okay. All right. So we're going to have to keep going, right? Right now, what I do want to ask is, you know, obviously at this point, you know, 2020 was a miserable year across the board, right? I mean, I think, you know, not only here in the United States, but, you know, throughout the whole world, there's so many things going wrong, right? Just trying to combat COVID-19. I think, you know, one of the things that we've seen, definitely here in the United States, is that, you know, the communities that are impoverished, right? The communities that have a lot of food insecurity, right? Those are the ones that seem to have been impacted the most, right? So what are some of the things that Revolution Foods is doing today to kind of combat that negative impact that COVID-19 has had in these areas?
yeah, I mean, it's like you said, 2020 was a crazy year, and, you know, 2021 is getting off to kind of a slow start in terms of getting better. But I would say, you know, in all seriousness, the partnerships that we have formed over this past year with, you know, whether it's city governments, county officials, you know, all kinds of different nonprofit organizations that are kind of coming together to think differently about how to get food to where it's most needed and in what format. Because, you know, previously you had people, you know, doing what's now a very high risk activity to get food on the table, right? Going outside, going to grocery stores. So we've done everything from, you know, partnering with New York City to provide, you know, boxes of meals for homebound seniors who, you know, have health conditions, so they shouldn't be going out of their houses. So those boxes get delivered to their doorsteps in many housing projects in New York. We did that during the height of the pandemic. In places like, you know, here in California, we have a partnership with Alameda County where, you know, the county is getting funds through the federal government and other sources so that we can provide meals that are, you know, packed in boxes, in multi-day boxes that families can pick up at their school sites. When they're picking up their school meals for their kids, they're also bringing home adult meals for the adults in the household, or for, you know, other non-school kids in the household. We have some really interesting partnerships with other school districts that are, you know, where families have trouble with mobility and are not able to get to the school sites. And so we're doing home delivery of meals, partnering with, you know, different delivery organizations to actually get meals directly to, you know, homes in San Francisco and Boston.
Is that something that you folks started like this year because of COVID? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that the pivot has been, you know, I know many organizations and companies have pivoted in different ways in the pandemic, but you know, going from like most of our focus being dropping off like hundreds of meals at a school site to be served in a cafeteria to, you know, now nobody's coming into that cafeteria, so how do we get those meals safely to homes has required just a lot of really creative work and creative partnerships. But I will say, you know, we just celebrated this week, we celebrated serving the 5 millionth meal during the pandemic to kids in San Francisco schools. So it's a ton of work, but it's great to see that families are getting the food that they need.
Right.
You know, working like on the front lines here down in New Orleans, you know, when the pandemic actually hit back in March, what we were noticing were the people that had the worst outcomes were people who were coming in that were obese, they were diabetic, they had coronary artery disease, and that all stemmed from like childhood and poor eating habits, and specifically from food insecurity that is like ravaging like New Orleans, you know. And so that's why, you know, working with this cause and working with you guys was something kind of like dear to our heart. It was because just what we were seeing and the poor outcomes that food insecurity can lead to.
Right, and I think, you know, just to piggyback on what Nick said, you know, everything from the video that, you know, Nick did last week, it's, you know, all these things are preventable, right? So you don't have to be in the case that you're in and have these severe symptoms. Those are all preventable issues, right?
Absolutely. Diabetes type 2 is a preventable and reversible medical condition. And so, you know, seeing it and treating all these cases is one thing, but I think what was really, you know, what really means a lot to us to actually try to prevent those causes, you know, and getting to the root of it. And, you know, and that's starting with like food security, food insecurity issues. And so what you guys are doing is, you know, amazing.
Incredible.
Oh, thanks.
So, Kirsten, rapid round of questions, right? I prepared you for this, right? So I hope you're ready. So we're just going to be shooting out questions to you. Just answer them as fast as you can, and we'll see where we go. Okay. Favorite meal of the day?
It's got to be family dinner.
Family dinner. I like
that.
What's the one food that you would not give up?
I think avocados. They're so good with everything. You can, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can, you know, put them all different ways, and they make everything taste better.
You're right, Mom. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, favorite restaurant in Oakland?
So I would say there's a couple. There's one part of Oakland that has a number of Ethiopian restaurants, and you might not think of Oakland as like having the best Ethiopian food. You might find it, you know, think it's like DC or somewhere else. But I love Ethiopian food, and if we ever get a chance to go out, that's my number one choice.
It's delicious. Wow, that's awesome.
What favorite show that you're watching on Netflix right now?
Well, I just finished Schitt's Creek, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word on Instagram.
Love it.
I loved it.
That was so good. Yeah, that was such a great series. If you got a free billboard to say whatever you wanted it to say, right? Other than I love Revolution Foods. Other than that, what would it be?
I would say stop talking, start listening.
Oh. I like that.
I think, you know, just seeing where our country is today, I think if we all did a little bit more listening to one another, we would get to a better place.
Great answer. Great answer.
Yeah. A multiplication question. What's 5 times?
25.
Nice! I'm going to stop you with that one. Okay, so this is Double Jeopardy. Right?
No pressure.
No pressure at all. Do you know what YOLO stands for?
I'm going to go with you only live once.
Nice. So, you know, we always discuss this and what, you know, how you only live once for us. And I think we talked about this, Kirsten, right? How it used to just mean kind of seizing that moment. And now what we've come to believe that, you know, it really means making it count and leaving an impact, right? And I think, you know, looking at, you know, what you have done, and you know, and Kirsten, your co-founder, and just your whole team at Revolution Foods, right? Everybody that you've mentioned, and you know, like you said, obviously the teachers and the school leaders, you guys are living that YOLO life, right? Making it count, and you're making an impact, and you know, love you guys for it. It's incredible. Truly, it
inspiring.
Really
it's very inspiring.
Oh, thanks. Well, and I love the sort of double meaning of, you know, like seizing the day, but also like living your best life while you have it, because we do only live once.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It's
precious, and you want to take care of it. You're
absolutely right. All right, so definitely want to get into because I think we're getting short on time here. Thank you very much. So definitely want to get into our partnership, right? And you know, Revolution Foods and working with YOLO and what this means to us, right? So, you know, as we understand it, and I think, you know, we talked about this too. Of it seemed to us, and when we're choosing who to work with, that, you know, Revolution Foods, essentially, it looks like there's two parts, right? So you have the one part where you folks are, directly working with schools, right, and getting healthier meals. And then there's the other arm where you use charitable donations, right, to fund some of these healthier meals. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so the vast majority of what we do is supporting programs that are largely federally funded. So, the National School Lunch Program, the School Breakfast Program, the Child and Adult Care Food Program. So these are all federally funded programs that provide free meals to, kids who qualify, seniors who qualify, it through different kinds of community partners. But then, in the last year, we've actually launched what we call the Feeding Good Project, because we have found that there are a lot of needs that are not being met by the federal government subsidies and other subsidies. And, until there's a more sustainable way for families to have high quality access to high quality food, there is a need for philanthropy to come in and step in and play a role. And so we set up the Feeding Good Project as a way for whether it's foundations or individuals who want to donate to providing healthy meals for families and individuals in need. So it's another way for those families to get access to high quality meals. And then I would say we're also excited about the partnership with you guys, because I think it's it's cool to have to be able to connect people doing physical activity and using an app and using technology to do good in the world, and connecting those two, I think, is a really unique model. So.
Oh, thank you for that. So, I don't even know if you know this, Kirsten, but our goal here, right, is to donate 2,000 meals to Revolution Foods, right, and we're doing that right here in New Orleans, right, and a couple reasons why we chose to do this in NOLA. One of the biggest reasons we chose to is because we found out that New Orleans is, one of the most food insecure cities, in the nation, right? And, you add that to specifically, I think the numbers are, 2/3 of students actually receive, 70% of their caloric intake, from school lunches as well, right? So, as you folks obviously saw, that's a problem, right? And I think you folks have a solution for it. And I think, us here at YOLO, we wanted to be part of that solution, right? So, in order to do this, and I discussed this early on of what we're doing, right, and of the platform that we're building, right. So again, what we wanted to do was make charitable donations fun, social, and transparent, right. And the best way, or the best example I have for this is when there was a time where a lot of people used to get together, we used to run 5Ks for a specific cause, right? So, last year, during the pandemic, a good friend of mine in Chicago decided that, he wanted to run a marathon, right? So he trained, he grinded very hard for this, and he's going to run it in July, right? And, we're in Chicago in July. Obviously, July in Chicago, it's freezing cold, right? It's raining. We all have our jackets on. But what was most memorable about that time, though, was that, this is a goal that he had been dedicated to doing, right? And all of us just being there, and that energy of all of us being there at the finish line for him, that's something that's just irreplaceable, right? So that's one of the experiences that we sought out to capture in our platform, right? The other experience that we wanted to capture is, the aspect of giving, right? So, and charitable donations. So one of the things that we found is that there's this concept that's called the giver's glow, right? Or the helper's high. And truly, this is an innate feature of humans, right? This is who we are. And we add that to having the social aspect and the community around it. It makes those things just become exponentially better, right? So that's the second experience, right? That we wanted to replicate within our application, right? So as you said, the first campaign that we're coming out with is Grind to Give, right? So we're going to have people working out and grinding and, being able to feel good, right? And we want to capture that moment and that experience of feeling good and working out with other people and being able to relate that over to a charitable cause of their choice, right? And I think, it's key for us to to make that feeling and make that experience relatable, right, to something that's happening in your community.
And I think, like to me, and maybe and obviously to a lot of people, is the most important part of donating is actually the transparency that's involved around that. I remember like growing up, like my parents, they were really into donating to orphans, specifically in India. And I would always see them like writing these checks there, and I really never got like, you know, what was going on behind that. And then one day, like when I was in college, they took me to India, and we actually went to that orphanage, and I'll get this moment, but when we walked in the door, you know, we see like all these kids like running like to my parents, and like grabbing them by their legs and calling them mama, papa, and I remember them just kind of completing the circle that way, you know, and actually, you know, seeing where their money is going to. It's like an undescribable feeling and moment. I mean, it left such a moment on me that, you know, it's, you know, part of the, one of the reasons why I'm wanting to create this is for other people to have that moment, that what you're doing and what you're donating and giving to people, like that, you know, that feeling of, wow, it's really helping, and that impact, there's actually like no words to describe that. And it's always like carried with me since that day.
Right.
So
okay. No, I've heard Nick, say that story a couple of times now, and you know, and every time it's truly encompasses what we're trying to do here, right? So you know, Nick mentioned completing that circle, right? And another reason why we were so fortunate and so happy to be working with Revolution Foods, because you know, this is something that we know that we're going to come together, we're going to pull our funds together, and we're actually going to donate meals right here in NOLA. We know where it's going. You know, we know the school. We know it's going to go to the 9th ward. So, you know, we want to be, not only we, but we want to have other people being part of that movement and being able to see where that's going, right? So, again, it's the relatable experience of everybody coming together, you know, working out. It's a relatable experience of giving and getting that giver's glow, that helper's high. And then it's the experience of being transparent and just completing that circle, right? And just relatable and bringing that all together, right? So that's who we are. That's what we want to do. That's our mission. That's what we want to accomplish.
Yeah, and we're so excited to partner with you guys on this, because I it's what keeps me going every day, is when I get to go into our schools and see kids, you know, and just think about the Head Start program that we're partnering with you guys on in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, those kids getting healthy suppers and taking them home. It's you know, there's nothing that can match that feeling of, you know, seeing a happy child with their
and I think I legitimately remember when Nick brought Revolution Foods to us, and he's like, guys, this is it. Don't look any further. This is who we're working with. They're right here in NOLA. We're going to do it. And then, you know, and just going through and seeing the impact, and then truly just wanting to be part of that. Right, wanting to be part of that experience, that hit home for us.
Yeah, just the people that give the most, I feel, have become like the most happiest people.
Yeah.
You know, there's just, you know, a known correlation between giving and then happiness.
Yeah.
And you know, it's something that we're trying to strive for, and then what we're trying to inspire. You know, we want to bring this feeling that we're having, you know, out to everybody in the U.S. and out in the world, really. And thank you for, you know, obviously partnering and helping, you know, start that movement.
Yeah. I think, you know, I'm getting a look saying that we're running out of time here, so thank you. So, you know, one of the things that I do want to say, obviously, is, you know, there are just so many causes out there, right? And obviously, it took us some time to find Revolution Foods. Certainly a truly worthy one. And I think, you know, one of the things that we did find is that just discovery, right? And just trying to find out, you know, what organization or, you know, what charitable foundation is going to be meaningful for the individual out there, right? And I think, you know, another problem that we wanted to solve too is, and that's why we want this movement behind it, right, is that whole social aspect, right? And that's why we truly wanted to put this out and truly make a social platform, getting everybody together. Because, you know, I think in our minds, we always think that, you know, if you don't know who else kind of has that same drive and that same dedication, right? So when you start bringing all these people together, then different people find out what they're into, right? And I think that will drive it as well.
Yeah, it's like being able to, if one person's donating and you add a social platform to that, and then all of a sudden you're looking at social media and being like, oh wow, Devon, what is he doing? He's doing well for himself, and he's also donating. It's like creating this infectious movement. It's contagious. Like when you see people doing good things and good things for themselves, like naturally other people want to join that, that progress in that movement.
And I think that's what you said when we asked you about your billboard, right? And just having people listening to each other, right? And finding out what each other is doing, right? And I think that's key. So, Kirsten, is there anything that you have for us?
Or for the audience.
Or for the audience out there?
Well, I mean, I just want to say thank you to you guys. I think what you're creating is going to be really impactful, and the focus that you have on giving and social connection, like we need those things more than ever right now in the world. And I think it's a really powerful platform that you're starting. And I think we're really proud and happy to be a partner and excited to have an impact together.
So good to hear that. Thank you so much, Kirsten. Thank you. My hands
so much for coming on with us today and providing this amazing educational content to a very important topic that I feel like a lot of people, aren't realizing, that's really out there, and bringing focus to that, and how that will help, impact our future kids and the health society of the United States. We also want to thank everybody that's out there viewing with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for being patient.
Tuning in with us. For those that had actually left questions in the comment section, we promise that after this is over, we will get back to you individually to make sure that we're answering those questions. All right. For those that are kind of new to us, please follow us on Instagram at YOLO.grind. We have a lot more coming soon, so please stay tuned. And seriously, thank you guys.
Thank you. Last plug, Sloppy Joe. Seriously, if you have a recipe for good Sloppy Joe. Kirsten, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. Great to be with you.
Bye.
All right. Go.
Woo!